among a lot of things that happen with addiction and marriage, divorce, having a child, and dropping out of college, I got to a point of desperation where I gained custody of my child full time. And at the same exact time, it was like an emergency custody situation. I got let go from my job that same exact day because I couldn't make it into my shift because I didn't have childcare available in such short notice. It was just like a really bad rock bottom time because it made me feel like I couldn't support my child. So, what brought me back to creating actually was because I was like, here's something that I love to do, and even if I don't believe in myself to make much money from it, it's better than nothing. So I started putting out like $50 sessions. I just need money. Like I'm trying to build my portfolio again. Just to even have it as like a side gig. It was always supposed to be like a side gig. Like I didn't think that it could be a full-time career. So I'm Ash. I'm a photographer that services Pennsylvania and Northeast Ohio. I just recently moved out there. I do wedding photography mainly, but a lot of like the conceptual arts and stuff that I curate are what feeds my soul, essentially. I want to keep building my business to really reach different avenues. And I don't, it's kind of hard to niche down, but like concert photography or like branding, like these are all things I love, as well as like the family photography that I do. How does it feel to be on the other side of the camera? We were just talking about this. So being on the other side of the camera, I feel like I have like that freeze fawn instinct that you do with the deer in headlights. I think it's because just from being behind a camera for the entirety of my career, almost like my whole life, ever since I've gained an interest in photography, it's just I like to capture things that I see that are beautiful, whether that in people, usually in portrait photography. So it kind of feels a little like intimidating for it to be on the other way around. I feel like it really helps because it reminds me of what it's like in my client positions. A lot of the times people come to me, especially for engagements or weddings, they've never been in front of a professional camera except for like graduation in high school where they drape that thing on you, and it was a whole deal. I didn't even buy mine because I was like, I don't like it. But I just it's nice to like put it back into perspective, so like why my job to make them comfortable in front of the camera is so important as a photographer. Talk to me about photography. How would you describe your style and approach? What drives you to create, and what is your mission? So, how would you describe your style and approach? I would say that I do a lot of visual storytelling through documentary style, like a photojournalistic approach, but also through a little bit of a loose editorial, which I would say there are times where I do pose very heavily, especially in bridal portraits and things like that, because the dresses are like real heavy. They're like, so they can be like 5 pounds, and I don't know how you wear that all day. I'm just saying. But so those times, it's just so much more natural to like pose a little bit more of an editorial, hard flash kind of style. Besides that, I would say that I used a lot of prompting in almost all my photography because I think that captures the most genuine, authentic versions of all my clients. They feel a little bit less on the spot in front of the camera, and they almost forget that the camera's there because you turn it into an experience. You make them have fun. That's probably the biggest thing I want all my clients to take away is like walking away from a session and being like, I was scared for no reason. Like this was a breeze. Like in the photos, of course, them loving it too. What drives me to create? So initially, actually, I started photography because my dad was a huge photographer by hobby. He's really like a gears and gadgets kind of person. And I really wanted to feel closer to my dad. My parents both worked quite a lot since they were immigrants. And what happened was like my dad was really, really into photography or golf. And I had tried golf and it was just like not gonna happen. I think it's because I played field hockey for so long that like the tiny little putting, like mini golf, is so infuriating. I feel like that's when like the worst part of me, like the worst side of me comes out during like a game of mini golf. It's not good. So photography, I took that on because of him. It drives me to create because growing up, of course, I had like some of the most beautiful family photos, but specifically, I feel like I got to witness my parents' love story from like the moment they met and were dating to like married, because my dad captured all of it. And it's some of my like fondest things to look back on. I have a couple, they have a ton, but to like look back on like my dad using my mother as a muse and like setting up a tripod and getting it of the two of them back in Korea is like, it's just so sweet. And I think it really touches my heart too, because I'm like almost a copy and paste version of my mom. So it's really, really nice to be able to look back on her in her 20s and be like, wow, that's exactly what I look like in my 20s. Minus the tattoos, but. And what is my mission? So initially, I really created a ton in high school, but I didn't believe in myself, even though like I look back on those photos and I was a kid and I was creating some bangers. Like I was doing good. I was like, what happened? Well, like life got the best of me, and like parental expectation got the best of me. Being first generation American is not easy. You know, there's a lot of like generational expectations that are put on your shoulders because you watch how hard your parents work and how they struggled. So for me, it was always like be a doctor, be a lawyer, get a really, really good benefit job with high paying, everything like that. Like I thought the only way to be successful was in that very stereotypical like 9 to 5 higher education job. So I quit. And then while in college, finishing my starting my undergrad degree, I just had no motivation or willingness to really want to do any career. And I remember being in college being like, why am I here? Like I don't want to work for a living. That's not I don't want to live to work. It's not at all anything I've ever wanted to do to like join like the capitalist society, but unfortunately it goes that way. So among a lot of things that happen with addiction and marriage, divorce, having a child, and dropping out of college, I got to a point of desperation where I gained custody of my child full time. And at the same exact time, it was like an emergency custody situation. I got let go from my job that same exact day because I couldn't make it into my shift because I didn't have childcare available in such short notice. He was probably like 5 months old, 6 months old. So he was no, maybe a little bit older. He was like less than a year though. And no job, unexpected full custody of my child after being like a shared custody situation. I kind of like, it was just like a really bad rock bottom time because it made me feel like I couldn't support my child. So what brought me back to creating actually was because I was like, here's something that I love to do, and even if I don't believe in myself to make much money from it, it's better than nothing. So I started putting out like $50 sessions. I just need money. Like I'm trying to build my portfolio again. Just to even have it as like a side gig. It was always supposed to be like a side gig. Like I didn't think that it could be a full-time career. So my mission to create is essentially wrapped around like wanting to support my child, wanting to create opportunity, and the fact that like believing in myself in that moment of desperation was exactly what I needed to do. So a lot of my photography, especially family photography that I do, like it's not well advertised, but a lot of the times it's a pay what you can, or especially like I have such a soft spot for moms or single moms or just single parents, and it's so hard out here for everyone, but it's terrifying when you have little babies to be responsible for. So, and I also think that like every mom deserves to be photographed too with their kids. That's not something that's like that people easily get, unfortunately. Okay. Talk to me about imposter syndrome and comparison. What made you doubt yourself for so long, and do you believe in yourself now? So imposter syndrome and comparison being like the thief of joy. I completely believe it. I was actually just thinking about it while driving over here today. Imposter syndrome, I've tried to talk to any creatives, any business owners, anybody who has elements of success in their life. I found out that it doesn't go away. And it's like, oh man. So here I am trying to figure out like healthy ways to cope with it. And if you have any idea, I could like definitely take some tips. So what made me doubt myself for so long, I think, is because I feel like I've always just like chased praise. My family, my parents were not very, my parents weren't around too much because they were working 12, 14-hour days, like pretty much through the whole time I was in elementary, middle school. And so like I was always a little lonely. I was always like just a little detached emotionally from family. And I feel like that did prolong this like inner doubt where if I did have like a school recital or an orchestra recital or like a school game and stuff, like I didn't really have people out there supporting me. It was just like expected of me to do my best. So if I ever won like a little award or anything, it never felt like a win. There was no reward to it, at least from the emotional sense of my parents who mattered. And it's not at all because they weren't good parents, it's because the society that we live in is so broken and the economy and everything that happens with hardship. So the largest part of doubt was just, like I said, trying to get a job that pays well. And I think that means different things to different people, but art and creativity was not something that I grew up welcoming as an actual career. It was always a hobby. It's always something that you did for fun, that you like to do and enjoy, but you have to have like 100 to 200K paying job that's 9 to 5 that pays the bills and makes your life easier. Life always revolved around money. And it's just, I think along all of that combined, it makes sense that I have a hard time believing in myself. And it makes sense that I have a really hard time like actually putting the faith in myself to succeed. And do I believe in myself now? I feel like that's such a loaded question because it's one of those things where every day it changes. There's days where I really feel really great about my work, and then there's weeks where like maybe the inquiries are not coming in that I'm just like, oh my gosh, what trap did I get myself into? It's so hard as a small business and a freelance contracted worker. It's just, you don't know when the next paycheck's coming. So you just kind of have to hope that it does. And there's some faith and belief out there, but like, it's so much harder to believe in myself. You know what I mean? It's easier to believe like something will work out. Because if you put it on the grander scheme, but if you think about like, oh, can I believe in myself? If you've lived with yourself and sat with yourself for so long, especially if like you struggle with self-esteem and self-confidence, it's kind of hard to be your number one like fan. I really hope to be able to achieve that more. It's something that I actively work on every day. But the imposter syndrome of my creative work feels so targeted because now there's monetary efforts that like you have to keep track of. So now that there's like what is it called? Like a dollar tag to like how I create art, it feels so personal. You mentioned addiction, and how did that experience shape you? So my addiction was really, really heavy within pretty much all the time I was in college. I was quite heavily addicted to pretty much anything and everything with like cocaine and stimulants or like anything powder related being like probably like the biggest issues. And I actually got sober. I got sober. It was like 2 days after my 21st birthday, which was 4 days after COVID lockdown started. So what happened is I had nearly asphyxiated because of some of the drugs that I was using. And at that point in time, I had just kind of started coming around to the idea that like, oh no, like I have a problem. But not knowing what the disease of addiction is, only knowing that it's like, almost like having an idea that it's like my own actions and this is like part of me and part of who I am, made it really hard to stop. And I ended up getting taken to the emergency room by my roommates. I remember like little bits and pieces, and I remember even like trying to like fight them out the door so I could keep using. So that was such a blessing for my college roommates at the time to really just be like, make the decision, like, she needs help. It ended up being the same weekend that my family, like my sister, brother, mom, and dad, were coming down to Pittsburgh to visit me for like one of the first times ever I've been in Pittsburgh as a student. And they met me at the hospital. So what else did we do? I dropped out for the semester. My mom carted me back home, and she did like her own intensive rehab treatment where I like stayed in the guest room, and she woke me up at like 8 a.m. to go take a walk, and she like wouldn't let me even have my vape, and like I was withdrawing from how many substances. It was insane, and doing an online IOP at the time. And I think that moment in time, every single 15 seconds almost, I had to keep reminding myself, like, okay, I don't want to use today, but if that's too hard of a feat, I'm going to give myself an hour. And if I still want to use in an hour, maybe I'll give myself another hour. And I really had to take it like seconds at a time, day by day. But my mom was like the saving grace. Like, she was doing exactly what I needed, even though I resented her for it. Because like even on the normal basis, I'm not waking up that early. No, no, no. I hate it. Not by my own choice. She'd actually like rip the covers off of me and be like, we gotta go take a walk. And it was really nice because a family that never really believed in mental health in general, like with my depression and things that I suffered with while living in that house, they really understood addiction. They were like, this is a disease. You're sick. They treated it like as if you needed treatment for cancer and things like that. And that Western ideology of addiction kind of like getting lost with stigma wasn't so much like the case for my family. So yeah, sorry. The experience shaped me because during those periods of time, I think battling addiction, which is one of the hardest things I ever did in my life, every day felt like a success. And it felt a little dumb. Like, it felt like a little like, I don't know I felt very vulnerable and I felt really exposed, but I would like post on Instagram about like, I made it a week sober. I made it 90 days sober. I made it like 90, I made it like, as my milestones kept coming, I'd post about it because the vulnerability to express that I was not doing well, but also the vulnerability to express that I am trying and I'm doing really well, and the support that came from it, I feel like was one of the main things about my success. Unfortunately, it's not just as easy as doing it for a small chunk of time. It's become like a daily battle, and I was in Narcotics Anonymous for quite some time, and I think it did save my life in so many ways. I don't partake in any 12-step programs anymore. I'm more so therapy driven and everything, but there's so many connections, so many things I learned about being vulnerable and transparent, but most importantly, like to stop lying to myself and to stop pretending like everything's okay. I think it gave me a little grace, but it also, looking back and like comparing it to what I've been given through it, it gives me so much strength, because if I did that, there's so many other things I can do. So many other. Because from when my life literally revolved around the next fix, like even if I was like actively taking a fix, I would immediately already be panicking about when the next opportunity will be to get the next one. And a lifestyle like that, to have like the disease thinking like that, there's no room for anybody. There's no room for yourself. There's no room for your own needs. And that's not something that I would ever voluntarily wish on anybody. It's probably the loneliest experience I have ever had, but it kind of gives me a little bit more resilience now. What are your thoughts on creative community versus competition? Oh, for sure, community over competition all the time. I may have been lucky, but I think maybe I've like just like segued around from people who see things as competition. I'm somebody who will always jump headfirst into collaborative works. And like I said, like I think it's partially imposter syndrome, but I also don't expect monetary return a lot of the time because when I do collaborative works with and build community within the creative network, it's something that like feeds my soul. It helps me meet other people and like I hate the word networking because I like feel like I'm maybe more sensitive and develop like more friendship wants than like actual like work wants. But like community is just so important. I feel like that's a majority of what keeps me going. Because competition, I feel like it will just be lonely, and then that also leads to so much more comparison. That leads to like sometimes feeling like a snake. Like you don't want to. I don't ever like do my business thinking about like what can this give me. A lot of the business that I do and the things that I take on, like all the collaborative works that I do, is very much like how can we all help each other to grow. If your younger self was here right now, what would you say to her? Oh man. If my younger self was here, first I would like give myself the biggest hug and just be like, you're perfect. You're perfect the way you are. Because the older I get, the more I realize how far and twisted we've gotten from these genuine inner child versions of us. And I feel like all my therapy work, I feel like everything that I do to work emotionally and mentally and physically, it's all things that like I once had as a young child that was beaten out of me. It's like the world is so tough that I wish I could go back and just be like, it's gonna be tough, but like just stay true to who you are. Don't try and fit any molds. Don't feel like you need to be anything else. And I feel like I had so much more love for myself in that period of time. I feel like all like so much inner healing journey is to just go back to that pure, untouched version that I know that I was, but it's been so long that it's like, would I even recognize it? You know? If your future self was here right now, what would she tell you to stop holding back? I feel like the biggest thing that I hold back on is taking leaps of faith. Like I said, I really struggle to like believe in myself and my work and everything. And I feel like part of that is trying to fit a mold. Like I said, like with my younger self, like I would tell her to be so authentic to herself. And I think that my future self would probably say the same thing. I think that authenticity, genuine nature, all these things are things that I value and always strive to be more of. And what's holding me back is being so concerned. Like, what does everybody else think? Do other people like what I'm putting out? Do other people like me? Am I annoying? You know, like my inner monologue's always so concerned about everybody but me. So that's probably something that like I maybe she'd tell me to be like more shameless. Who knows? Kind of like to think that. Like one thing about future Ash that I'm super excited for is that you don't really see like tatted Asian grandmas.
She's gonna be so
Oh! Like, think how fierce I will be. Like, as soon until I open my mouth and I'm like all bubbly and whatever. Yeah, the goal is just keep it going. Like, you know, like you see like a lot of like from Japanese art, like the Asian, it's usually Asian Japanese men that are heavily tatted like that.
Yes.
Where's the women at? The baddies. I'm gonna just like drop like random lore. You know, I'm gonna drop like, you know when someone gives you like a riddle and it's supposed to be wise, but it like I'm gonna do that, but it means nothing. It's gonna make you think. What is the biggest lesson life is teaching you right now? Actually, the biggest lesson that life is teaching me, I think, is more in route with what my son is teaching me. He's 2 and like we're going through a lot of tantrums. He's still trying to figure out how to piece sentences together. We're still learning new words. And the biggest lesson about my life, which is probably in the realm of motherhood right now, is to slow down. I when you have a child who's like curious about everything but also needs help, but it's like so important, because something that gets me really overstimulated or frustrated is when things aren't done fast, or if I have to take longer than expected to get a simple task done. It can be a little bit like of a nuisance to like take an extra 30 minutes to do the dishes. But that's one of the things, ever since I pivoted and started having my son actually do regular house chores with me, like stopping and letting him determine like the pace that we walk in certain places, and let his curiosity explore, and watching him adventure is like the greatest payoff in the world. But even though it gets a little messy, the dishes are going to be not done still, like all that kind of stuff, it's I have to constantly remind myself that it's his first time, and doing these things with him, showing him these things from such an early nature, is going to pay off way more than me trying to get it done as fast as possible while he's sitting on the iPad or something of the sort. I've noticed that him being more hands-on with things that I'm doing and like teaching him and walking him through really also allows me to slow down and take a breath and find like greater appreciation in the simple day-to-day house chores like vacuuming. He thinks it's so cool to vacuum. I'm like, I hope this sticks around. I know it won't, but
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe he'll like really love cleaning, but who loves cleaning? I don't know. What are you learning to love about yourself? So something I'm really starting to learn to love about myself, which is like I can't even narrow it down, but I'm just really trying really hard to love me. And that comes in so many different forms. It comes in like self-compassion, and it comes in just like body acceptance. That's, I know, just like a hard one. It comes in like treating myself in reasonable ways, and like self-care is like totally different these days when you're running around busy. It's not just like being like a 17-year-old girl with like no worries in the world and like putting on a face mask. Now I'm like, this is me time, undisrupted. Like, I need this. And it's not even so much that it's doing anything, it's just the fact that I put 15 minutes to pour into my own cup. I feel like loving yourself is something that's difficult to do. At least for me, I feel like it also kind of like is a balancing act, where I'm a mother, I'm a business owner, I'm a fiance, like I have so many pets, like I have like a whole zoo in my home. All my love and affection has always poured into these things, and just even finding the time to pour it back is quite hard. It's usually when I'm like so burnt out and having a meltdown that I'm like, okay, I need it. But like, why can't I just like get to the point where like I don't have to teeter over the edge and have a meltdown? I used to, like, before I became full-time with photography, I was finishing my undergrad, I was doing bartending, and I was also doing like crazy amounts of photography work to get myself started. And it'd probably be like 80-hour weeks as a single mom. And what would happen was that I would actually have to like schedule like a 4-hour chunk in my calendar, on my Apple calendar, to be like, don't schedule anything here. You need to put time to yourself. I probably end up still doing chores or something, but at the same time, it's just like so sad that like I get put in the back burner. This is something that I need to like definitely do better for myself. I know. Let's see. How has it felt to be seen in the hot seat today? Biggest takeaway and any thoughts? It was super awesome being in the hot seat. I feel like I'm like rambling.
You're not.
Yeah, I feel like a little like, oh man, like I was thinking of like possible questions that would happen on the way here, and that kind of just all went out my head like as soon as I walked in the door. It's really nice, and I feel like it's honestly a lot easier because you have like the kindest smile. You're literally got like the kindest face. So like when I'm speaking of these things and I see you smiling, it's just like, oh, like this is somebody that I would love to talk to on a regular basis about these things. Like, it's just easy. The biggest takeaway is probably that, like, oh man, like I talked a lot about like not believing myself and loving myself, and I feel like it's a little pessimistic. And I think this is just one of those things that like assume from at least the people that I'm close with and things that we all struggle on some basis with these things, whether it's quite often or whether it comes around, but I don't think it's something that you fully escape. And I think that the vulnerability to like even show like, yeah, like I'm doing all this work. I'm meeting with all these people, taking their photographs, doing all these really beautiful things in these really beautiful locations, but like my work life balance is difficult. My balance with loving myself is difficult. And the biggest takeaway is just that I don't think anyone's got it figured out. And if it seems like they do, you probably just don't know them enough. My final thoughts. I I don't know. I feel like it's really nice that I feel like this turned a little bit more therapeutic than business. So that's where I'm like, oh, I don't know. But my final thoughts is just that in order to create a business that's genuine and authentic, these vulnerable versions of myself is something that honestly needs to be kind of worn on my sleeve. Because I would really never want someone to think I've got it all figured out. Because if that's the case, then I've created a persona that doesn't exist. And that's easy to do on social media. And there's times where it's not really necessarily appropriate for the business sense. But every client that I have ever gotten in, we always like stay in touch on Instagram, and I'm rooting them on, and I know that they're probably rooting me on too. So it develops a little bit more of a deeper connection than just the average client employee type of way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.